Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ethiopian authorities arrested thousands of people earlier this week, with many being sent to military camps for rehabilitation. Human rights activists call on the government to justify its arbitrary detention of prisoners. Also, we head to Mozambique, where refugees are starting to return from Malawi, where they fled after a bloody cycle of violence was restarted between rebels and army troops 4 years ago. And we head to Burkina Faso, where a prison in Bobo Dioulasso is focusing on encouraging cultural arts in the inmates in a bid to prepare them for their release back out into society. But first, Ethiopian authorities have arrested thousands of people over the last week and sent many to military camps for rehabilitation. The crackdown followed violent ethnic clashes and demonstrations earlier this month. The police commissioner of Addis Ababa also raised the official death count from 23 to 28. About 1,200 people believed to be involved in the fighting were detained, but only about 107 faced charges. A further 2,000 were picked up for petty offences in bars where people smoke shisha or chew cat leaves. Well, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had released thousands of prisoners earlier this year as he brought in reforms, but is now being accused of ordering arbitrary detentions. Tom Gardner joins us now with more. Tom, violence last week was pretty serious and followed by protests over the fact that not enough was being done to stop it by authorities. Do you think that the concern about the scale of the arrests is overblown?
Well, no. I mean, not in terms of the scale of the arrest. I mean, certainly, no one is criticizing the fact that there have been arrests. People wanted arrests for the unrest in the last couple of weeks. There have been calls for prosecution, and there's been calls for the government to start maintaining law and order in the country. But the concern is the scale and it's the fact that the people who have been arrested, it seems to have been done arbitrarily without any due process or transparency. People think the arrests are politically motivated and sort of unconnected to the actual events of the last couple of weeks. And as you mentioned, I mean, most bizarrely, it's again seemingly unconnected entirely. Is the mass arrest of youth in the city, at shisha bars and chewing chat leaves, which these substances aren't illegal. So it's entirely unclear why they've been arrested. Again, and also, sending these detainees off to re-education camps. That's a replay of some of the ruling party's worst past practices. Looks very cat-handed, and I mean, it's happened in previous years during the state of emergency 2 years ago, and it was very ineffective.
Do you think all this could suggest a U-turn in Abiy's reform policies? We saw him release thousands earlier this year, and now we're seeing hundreds or thousands arrested.
Well, I mean, firstly, just some context. To an extent, this is kind of possibly all politics. I mean, there's a big party congress taking place next week, which is something that's been delayed multiple times. The ruling party, the EPRDF, is very divided. There's a lot of discontent within its ranks concerning unrest in recent months. So part of this might be a pre-Congress attempt to show coalition colleagues that that the Prime Minister has the situation under control. But I mean, to an extent as well, I mean, this is sort of predictable to an extent. I mean, people have been expecting this. The scale of the disorder in Addis and around the country, actually, it demanded a firm response from the government. Not a response of this kind, really, but I spoke to people weeks back who said it was only a matter of time before the Prime Minister would have to clamp down on the political activities of various opposition parties that have been welcomed back in the past few months. People said it was naive, possibly, to invite everyone back. Exiled politicians with clashing visions and ideologies without a clear roadmap to political participation. What will and will not be tolerated, and expect everything to be peaceful. So in a sense, this was inevitable. But the way the administration's gone about it, it leaves much to be desired, I think.
Okay, thanks very much. Tom Gardner there for us in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Look now at some news in brief. Major roads in Cape Town were blocked as demonstrators took to the streets in protest over poverty, corruption and crime in the city. Though the rallies were mostly peaceful, scuffles with police did break out. Officers fired stun grenades and water cannon at some crowds. President Cyril Ramaphosa's vowed to tackle the country's ailing economy with a multi-billion-dollar plan, but growth forecasts continue to shrink. On Tuesday, as part of the stimulus plan to lift the continent's top economy out of recession, South Africa announced visa reforms aimed at encouraging investment and tourism. The new regulation will allow frequent visitors and foreign business travellers to have long-term multiple entry visas of up to 10 years. The new rules come in next month. And Morocco's navy's fired on a migrant boat. Officials say that a patrol was forced to shoot at a speedboat being driven by a Spaniard in Moroccan waters because he refused to obey orders. At least 4 migrants were wounded, according to local officials. Morocco is a key route for migrants trying to get to Europe via Spain. Now, a South Sudanese surgeon who spent decades helping victims of war and conflict in the area has been given the UN Prize for his humanity and selflessness. Evan Attar Adaha runs the only hospital in northeastern Mabang County and receives the 2018 Nassan Refugee Award. Former winners include Eleanor Roosevelt. Now, South Sudan's been ravaged by fighting since its creation in 2013. Dr. Attar will receive a $150,000 reward to help with his work. He says there is a lot more of that to do in South Sudan.
We have really to expand because we are now serving people over 200,000. The refugees alone are around 140 or 150,000. The host community, 70,000. And then now we have people who are coming almost from the whole region of Upper Nile. All of them are coming to the same hospital. So the number becomes so big, huge. And we try to give the services to the people. But now we are overwhelmed by these numbers.
Hundreds of people who fled fighting in Mozambique have started returning from Malawi as the situation in their homeland improves. Thousands left when rebels and government troops renewed a bloody cycle of violence 4 years ago. But now the guns have fallen silent and farming families are desperate to return.
The Luwani camp in Malawi hosts refugees from Mozambique. They fled fighting in their country between 2013 and 2016. The camp had already welcomed refugees during Mozambique's 16-year civil war that ended in 1992 and left 1 million people dead. It opposed the Marxist-inspired Frelimo and the Renamo. These last 2 years, peace talks have resumed between the two parties, and hundreds of refugees are ready to go home.
I was born here because of the war in our country, which ended in 1992. I went to Mozambique with my parents after that war. In 2015, internal conflict started again in our area, and we fled again in 2016 to come back here.
This is the day for us to return home, and we are praying to God so that if the conflict starts again, we can come back here safely. We are grateful to the government of Malawi for its hospitality.
Many refugees are eager to get back to Mozambique before the start of the rainy season in November. They want to plant their crops on their untended farms and start a new life in their homeland.
In the Boba Dioulasso prison in western Burkina Faso, a prisoner selected to take part in an arts-driven rehabilitation initiative is set to release his debut rap album upon securing parole. It's all part of a bid to get inmates focusing on cultural projects to prepare them for their life after prison. Take a look.
Behind the prison gates, a real recording studio. Jonathan, known as Janito, has been locked up for almost a year in Bobo Dioulasso prison in western Burkina Faso. Jailed for burglary, he started recording a rap album to create purpose in his daily routine.
The living conditions really are not good at all, because here as a prisoner you have 1,000 problems. There is suffering. There are others who are here with nothing. For others, even having enough to eat is a problem.
A former tradesman and musical novice, Janito won a casting event like The Voice organised by Burkina musician Freeman Tapoli.
In terms of reintegration, music can do a lot, because I live for music, and I think that if someone has a talent, they have a talent, and his talent is 3 times above mine, so I think he can go beyond reintegration. He will be rehabilitated, but I think he will also be able to reintegrate other people. He will be able to provide jobs for people.
These kind of projects are implemented to help prisoners reintegrate into society. But in this prison, like others in the country, the administration has limited means.
The problem is that we are often confronted with a lack of resources, which means that we do not manage in all prisons to have activities suited to the social reintegration of prisoners. A policy does exist, but the means are not often available.
In a few months, Jonathan will request day parole. If it's granted, Janito will officially launch his album. In the meantime, the apprentice artist is taking advantage of his setting to add the finishing touches to his video.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.